Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Alberta Freemason podcast. I'm Preston Meyer, chaplain and past master of Acacia Lodge number 11 in Edmonton, and the editor of this production.
Hi, my name is Right Worshipful Brother Tobias Terrill. I'm a member of Charity Lodge number 67 in Lethbridge, Alberta. And as we're talking about community involvement, I'm also a Lions member, a Legion member. I've been involved with the Alzheimer's Society, Kin Canada, and many other groups throughout the community.
I'm Andrew Panner. I am a member of Acacia Lodge number 11, and I don't have any fancy titles because I'm just a brother. And I'm currently a member at large living in Calgary, Alberta. I've been involved in community building from the lowest level, being involved in 4-H as a kid, to being heavily involved in church ministry. My dad's a pastor. I even did some time in Bible college as well, just getting involved with various all kinds of initiatives, whatever they may be, community leagues and that sort of thing. Always been involved in everything over the course of my lifetime.
Hey everybody, my name is Worshipful Brother Dave Boutilier. I am the IPM and DOC for Fort McMurray Lodge 195 and a advocate of community building. I have been in Fort McMurray now since 2006, and this community has given me some of the best moments of my life. And as a result, it's been my duty to give back. Most recently, I've held various positions in different organizations on their board of directors. I currently, my day job is an executive director for a nonprofit here in Fort McMurray, and I own two companies. A lot of brothers only know me as Boots because I'm the owner and proprietor of Cocktails by Boots, a beverage services company here. But what a lot of brothers don't know is I also own a company called Right Brain, Left Brain Solutions, which is an organization that trains nonprofits and artists with their business acumen.
So, Right Worshipful William Brook, Lodge 195, Fort McMurray. And yeah, community involvement. Our lodge actually recently went from being more of a traditional lodge to more of a social lodge. So we do a lot of social engagement with the brethren as well as the community, out in large. This is the second year that we're doing an annual golf tournament for charity. So last year we had done one for the Ukrainian Society, and this year's charity of choice is the Autism Society. So every year we pick a different nonprofit, and then we raise funds for them. So that's like one of the major ones that we do.
Awesome.
So I'm curious. It's very cool to offer financial support. What does the engagement look like with these groups?
So we actually, as a lodge, we kind of, at the beginning of the year, there's about 4 or 5 that guys bring forward that they'd like to fundraise for. And then the lodge will vote and pick which one is the charity of choice. And then once we have that finalized, we'll reach out to that charity and we'll start engaging with them on different fundraising ideas, as well as the volunteers that they're going to need to assist with the golf tournament, because this takes roughly 20 volunteers or more to help run, especially when you have an event on every hole, which we try to do, right? And then there's other things. So like with the Autism Society, one of the brethren decided to start a raffle on a Mac tool chest. So we're selling tickets on that. And then all the profits from that go back to the Autism Society. We're using their registration number and everything else like that. So it's all up on the up and up with like AGLC. So yeah, last year we kind of did the same thing. We picked a charity of choice, and then we started to liaison with them to figure out volunteer, what things we can fundraise. We try to make sure they have a registration number as a nonprofit, so then we can kind of piggyback off of that and use that so that everything's on the up and up with AGLC. And and then we just promote the heck out of it.
Fundraising aside, we also try to engage the charity of choice for the year. And I believe this is our 4th or 5th year doing it this way. Um, ask them what they need, really. At the end of the day, everyone needs cash. That's a forgiven. We're not going to get around that. But a couple of years ago, when our charity was the SPCA locally, we asked them what they needed. And one of the things that they needed was space. Well, we attempted to run through uh, through some channels to see if we could get them a extra trailer where we could slap the square and compass right on it, let them know that this is that's happening the by the Masons. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out. But if you don't just go out and start cutting checks or fundraising. You need to engage with these organizations, find out what they need, find out how they need it, because some of them just need labor. Some of them need funding. Some of them need an understanding. Some of them need connections within the community. And as Masons, we all have different networks that we're part of. And by utilizing those networks, we're often very successful in engaging with the groups that and getting them what they need. Last year, the Ukrainian school, they had volunteers in spades, right? It was great that support, and they needed mostly funding, so that's where we built that model off of. This year with the Autism Society, we found out that they recently had a budget shortfall, so that's one of the reasons why we took it over the next. But the thing about that charity is that it affects many brothers in our lodge. A lot of folks have children who are on that spectrum, and they utilize those services. So those services are expensive. And the thing that we've noticed that asking the brethren what kind of charity that they wish to engage in the community, getting their buy-in often means bringing people with more focus into the lodge. So we have a couple of our more junior brothers who have children who have autism, and it's night and day their level of involvement inside the lodge because we took an active interest in what is making their life hard outside of the lodge.
Yeah, for sure. There's a famous everybody knows me had to have a little bit of famous quotes and things like that, but there's a famous Audrey Hepburn quote that goes like this: "As you grow older, you will discover you have two hands, one for helping yourself, one for helping others." And I think that we as Freemasons, we often forget and we think we focus on, I've heard from lodges and I've heard comments about, oh, well, we can't do any outside charity stuff. We have to focus on the higher education bursary fund or the Masonic Foundation. Both great charities, and within the lodge, absolutely, those should be your primary focus. But if you want to engage the community, you know, the brothers that are supporting those two charities within your lodge, they're already brothers. So if you want to expand your lodge, you have to go outside of that. So making this a step in showing yourself with outside community involvement, that's the critical thing. And it doesn't have to be something great. There are simple things like once a year doing a walk, getting involved with CF or something like that. Terry Fox run, all these amazing little things. And it's a once a year thing. So you ramp up for it for a couple weeks, maybe even a couple months, and you're done. So you can do things like, Movember or other things like that. If you have something that's near and dear to, as you say, Boots, like many different, you've got larger numbers in your area that are on that autism scale. Well, then you support that. And I think that that's where the lodge needs to come together and support a brother, and support them in doing whatever it is that they're doing. We had an instance here, in Lethbridge they do, or some other communities they'll do like the food bank fill that bus. And so we had a brother down here that took that initiative, and he went around to lodge after lodge and said, "Hey guys, I'm going to be part of this. I'm going to be part of a team. Anybody want to jump on board? Let's do this." And that's how you drive it. People see you as a Freemason out there in the community doing the good work, and they think, why is he doing that? And then they inquire. And if you say it's because I'm a Freemason and I'm being charitable with my time and my wallet, then they're going to see that as a value.
100%. And I'm gonna pitch in here and bring up a point that I've specified in a couple of my articles that I've published through the Alberta Freemason, which is that you need to get engaged with other organizations in the community. And the biggest way that a rural lodge can engage with the rest of their community is by getting involved with the 4-H club, because that's the future of masonry right there. right, is all of these kids, the fact that they're country kids, a lot of them are probably going to be staying within the community. And small towns revolve around volunteer engagement. They have to, because they don't have the means of or resources to do anything else. So that, like, it's everybody in the community pitching in. And if you want to show that you're a member of the community, then you as a lodge must also pitch in with the community. And that's the best way that you can make a good impression in the rest of the community, is by demonstrating that you're there. And if you partner with a 4-H club, or even just a regular, any other youth organization that happens to be in your community, whatever that may be, if you partner with them, they're young, so they can do all the stuff for you. You just have to, show up and put your name on it. You know what I mean? And like, if you cut the checks to help them, like, do the thing. Like in my mind, when I was in 4-H, we did an annual bottle drive, right? And we'd be driving up and down the range roads and all these places, like, asking people for their bottles, and we'd be filling up horse trailers full of bottles and cans and stuff like that. And people wanted to give because they wanted to give to the 4-H club. If we as a lodge, if we can facilitate them being able to raise money for the 4-H club, whether that's like donating like a horse trailer if you happen to have one, or donating like shop space if you have a mechanic shop or something like that, donating like, like anything, donating time or whatever, like they can do whatever it is that they need to do. You just need to show up and help them facilitate that. And I picked 4-H clubs specifically because that was the example in my brain, but it can be literally anything else. And it's great to hear that in Fort McMurray they're working with the Autism Society. Like in Edmonton, Acacia number 11 has been working with Ronald McDonald House, and we could be doing a lot more for them, but it's one way that we can be integrating into the rest of the community. You remember that back in the day, a lot of these lodges were founded and named after specific neighborhoods. In Edmonton, we have Norwood Lodge and Eastgate Lodge and Highlands Lodge, and on and on and on. They were all like supposed to be helping ameliorate their specific communities, right? And I think that's something that lodges need to keep in mind, is that we are not just here to be cloistered away reading our esoteric texts and enjoying our fellowship, our festive words and everything like that. That's all part of it, but another major part of it is helping to ameliorate the community around you. And by doing that, but you create a symbiotic relationship between the lodge and the broader community. And that is Freemasonry in its purest form.
4-H is a good example, Andrew, because in 4-H it's not just about animal care. It's there's a lot of different aspects. There's a public speaking portion of it, and all kinds of different things. And so I've participated as a judge in various things every year. I'm proud to say that I help with the Job's Daughters and their pageant every year as a judge on behalf of Freemasonry, and it's just a wonderful experience to grill these young aspiring ladies and give them difficult questions and see them hum and haw and come up with all kinds of different responses, and it's just wonderful to be a part of that. So it's just a simple giving a little bit of time, but you're helping them grow and become a better person. And so there's a lot of different ways that we can give back in our community. I want to touch on one point. You talked about doing bottle drives and things like that. We forget the key critical element to those fundraising efforts. When you go to the public and you're doing that type of thing, yes, you're raising money, but there's a side benefit. You are creating awareness that your organization exists. And that is something that has long since been forgotten, because we're this quote unquote secretive group that has met in the dark and down back alleys and whatnot. Well, if we would like to get known and we would like to be public, what better thing than to have public events where you create awareness? I unfortunately watched one of my clubs basically die because they didn't want to have a lot of public fanfare or awareness. nobody knew they existed.
We are here to make good men better. And we can use whatever adage we want to do so. But the most common one that we hear time and time again is to be one, ask one. Well, how do you ask one if you don't know where they are? And how do you know that they're the group that you want to be with unless you see them doing the things that you enjoy doing? We all meet for the business meetings. We like to dress up. We like to look nice. We like the ritual. We like to do the things that we have to do. But unless we are going to actively engage the community, we are not going to find new members. And there are members out there who really, really want to be part of something bigger than themselves. They just don't know where to look. So when they see Masons out at a parade, when they see Masons on social media donating to this group, when they see Masons out doing a bottle drive or in the community helping something, a group of our lodge about 4 years ago on Christmas Eve all got together and went to a widow's house just down the block from my place, and we chipped the ice away from their driveway. We cleaned their gutters. We did all the winter maintenance that was neglected on this property, and we had 3 people from the neighborhood just show up with shovels. Hey, saw you guys were doing this. Why are you doing this? Who are you? And through those conversations. Now, I don't know if any of the other lodges up in McMurray had grabbed any of those guys as members, but those 3 people who did not know Masons were in town now know that there are 3 lodges in town and that this is the kind of things that guys do. We just get out there and help the community. And you know what? If they don't ever join, that's fine. They now know who we are, what we stand for, and the principles that we inculcate within.
Yeah, for sure. I've done a lot of research on various different community groups, nonprofits, because I've been heavily involved with many of them over the years. And just about every single nonprofit or society group has some level of origins in Freemasonry. Everything from Rotary to Lions, Elks, all of them, Eagles, Oddfellows, of course, and things like that. But the only one that doesn't actually is Kin Canada. They have no origins in Freemasonry whatsoever. But Kin Canada will serve the community's greatest needs. That's their motto. And so that is open to interpretation, which I think is just, it's wonderful and it's all accepting, which is great. But yeah, so I just want to point that out.
I
So
think,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that Freemasonry brings the people forth who wish to volunteer. The people who believe that their life is missing something and they want to do more. And as a result, if you uh, see somebody who is in that mind frame, that mindset. If you know somebody, well, we talked about, not just bringing people in to the lodge who are acquaintances from work because you don't really know what they're about and what they stand for. Well, you can do that if you know how they treat their community. And I think that's a great litmus test for any prospective new member is, and one of the things that we may want to think about asking in our initiation packages is, what do you do for the community?
Not a bad question.
I'm just gonna throw this out there that while I like that option or that idea, and even if it's just to get the seeker or candidate or however you want to phrase it, even just to get them thinking like broader about how they personally impact their community. I think that I don't know, like it seems like I feel like it kind of the reason why they're joining the lodge is because they're looking for a community. If they were already engaged in community, they wouldn't necessarily need a lodge, right? This is kind of like the tricky line to walk is that like we want to be a part of the community, but at the same time we function as a community for people that don't have a community. Do you know what I mean? Like just as third places continue to disappear, we're losing the ability to engage with community, with people outside of our individual family units, right? I think that this leads to a bit of an existential question for lodges, which is that we need to teach our new candidates the ones entering into our lodges, how to integrate into a community and then take that and put it into the larger community.
You never look down on a brother unless it's to help them out or help them up. And we all know the tenets, brotherly love, relief, and truth. Well, they extend beyond the craft, beyond the lodge. They extend to our community, neighborhoods, and things like that. And so, relief means relieving those that maybe are less fortunate or in times of distress or circumstance. And that includes our community. And so we should be supporting everybody. We should be getting involved. We do make commitments of charitable, in the Northeast angle and things like that. And so I do think that many people make those commitments, but then they just maybe through want of time or difficulties, other commitments, they just kind of it's a passing thought and they kind of forget about that. And so they're busy with life and they don't want to necessarily help out. And so for them, maybe, writing that check is easier than them spending an hour volunteering. Switch it around a little bit, spend some time.
When I was the DDGM and having to go to the rural lodges and stuff like that, coming up with ideas with them to help them out, just to get into that community engagement mindset. And a lot of the comments that came back to me was, we're not a service club. If we wanted to do that, I would have joined the Kinsmen, or I would have joined Lions or whatever, right?
Great. So go join him.
Yeah, exactly, right. But if you look at the United Grand Lodge of England, you go to their website, they have a tab for charity. Now in England, they don't have United Way, right? They don't have these social programs that you would see in Canada. And so they've taken on the responsibility of more or less being the United Way for the entire country. Now, obviously, that's a huge, grandiose idea. But it also goes back to one of our tenets for, charity relief. They're doing it for their entire country. The Masons are running it. They're generating close to 12 million pounds a year, and they donate out over 8 million pounds a year. And so if you're saying that Freemasonry is not a service club, and yet the Grand Lodge of England are doing exactly that, and that gets them out into the community, it gives the membership something to do. And then the payback is that more men want to join the fraternity because they see what they're doing in the community and they see the good that you're doing, or you might have even done something good for their family, right? And that's the residual effect. That's the payback, is like, hey, I'm going to come back here. I want to be a Mason because if this is what they're doing, this is what I want to do.
If
Absolutely.
I asked every one of you to join a softball league, I would need to offer zero additional explanation as to what that meant.
Yes.
Right.
If I was to ask you to join the lodge, you four, I wouldn't have anything else I would have to say, but the average male wouldn't have a clue what that meant, because we're coming off of multiple generations of men who prized secrecy over fundamentals. And no, that's not fair to say. I apologize. Secrecy over, say, community needs. Um, they they loved the idea of being involved in a secret society. It was very much cool to do so, and cool not to talk about that. Fast forward to our grandparents' generation, our father's generation, and that has basically allowed the Masons, ironically, to live in the shadows, where we don't actually want to be. Where the conspiracy theorists want us to be. So getting us back into the public limelight, so to speak, needs more than just your 3 degrees a year and your 1 or 2 barbecues, right? We need to become bigger than that. Now, we're never going to become the Grand Lodge of England's charitable arm here with us 5 in the room, but it's a good start, right? We have Shriners, and it's often said that the Shriners are the fundraising arm of the Masons. Well, they have got a very specific mandate and a very specific course. And as a concordant body, they are very focused on what they do, and people join them because they like what they do. And who doesn't want to help kids? But the reality is, there's many different groups. Like I said, our lodge, with our charities of choice that we've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years now, we did one year where we helped refugees. We did one year where we helped animals. Now we're dealing with special needs. It's There are other groups out there that need this kind of support. We held an open house last year. We set everything up. We didn't open our VSL, and we invited the community to come in. And for the most part, it went really, really well. I think we got 2 or 3 new guys who are really interested and end up making the commitment and are now their fellow crafts in our lodge.
If we're discussing like community involvement on like writ large, the fact that in Fort McMurray they're running an annual golf tournament is, I think, a phenomenal thing, and I think that ought to be greatly commended, highly commended, because that's a perfect example of like community engagement with like that is tangible, that people can interact with, and people show up to a golf tournament specifically because they like golf or they've been invited or any number of things, and when they see that it's being sponsored by a Masonic lodge in the area, then they immediately associate that, oh, that organization is involved with putting fun events on within the community. Now, so I grew up in the area of Brooks, Alberta, and there is one event that goes down every single year, and it's always a tremendous event. Everybody comes there from miles around, and that is the Kinsman Rodeo. And it's a pro rodeo. They've got pros coming in from all over the place competing for real cash money. They got the midway there. They got a parade every year. It's always a fantastic event, and it's always sponsored by the Kinsmen. Meanwhile, going back to another fraternal society that's no longer with us anymore, the Gyros. And Tobias would be familiar with the Gyros because they built a park in Lethbridge, a great big park over by the hospital. It takes up an entire city block. It's a fantastic park. I used to spend a lot of time in Gyro Park, but it wasn't until many years later, after I became a Mason, that I realized the Gyros were a service fraternity. And one of their big things to do was building parks in new developments. Why can't Masons be doing that? Why can't Masons be raising money to be building parks and have Masons Park? We're having a picnic this weekend, and we're having it at Masons Park. You know, and then everybody knows, oh, that's what the Masons do. So getting involved in the community, just doing stuff that benefits the community, even if it's not explicitly charity, it still does tremendous good for both for the craft, but also for the community, creating that symbiotic relationship.
They don't necessarily need to do the big scale things. And when we talk about community involvement, Andrew brought up a great point earlier that we all belong to multiple communities, and we can't forget that our lodges are a community as well. So if you've got a smaller group of people that don't necessarily have the capacity, and I like to use the word capacity because that means time, money, effort, whatever, to run a big project, then they could definitely deal with something smaller. Do they have a local high school? Perhaps they could put money together to start a period poverty campaign, which is something that massively affects young rural women. Sponsored by your Masonic Lodge, or is there a university close by? Could they do a barbecue for students who are supporting grounds cleanup? Adopt a highway programs are something that your Masonic Lodge can do very easily with little involvement. And all of these little things, the businessman in me always goes back to marketing, right? It's all of these little things that we do ultimately help with that community recognition as using community in the traditional sense of the word where we live geographically. But within the lodge community itself, it creates new bonds. And those are the things that I think keep a rural lodge going.
If I could get in 20 words or less a reason that might inspire somebody who isn't terribly interested in getting engaged in their community, What 20 words would those be?
The service that you do for others is the rent that you pay on this earth.
I love that.
That's Muhammad Ali. I love that saying. Absolutely love it.
Time is the most valuable asset you own. When you give it to somebody else, that's absolutely tremendous. So why not give it? Why not support each other?
I'm going to say, what are you doing to encourage people to come behind you? And that's kind of the whole reason that that's a major theme of what we've been talking about today is the reason for community involvement is to ensure the longevity of the fraternity.
All right, Preston, I got another way to phrase it.
All
So
right.
a community will subsist on its own based on supply and demand. It will have stores come and go based on needs. But what makes that community a place to live is the work and effort by the volunteers in that community. They're the ones that build the parks. They're the ones that keep it clean. They're the ones running all of the youth programs and all these other nonprofits. That's what makes that community an enjoyable place to live. So why aren't we a part of that?
Mine would be my grandfather planted a tree whose shade he will never sit in. It is my responsibility to do the same.
Find something to get involved in where people can see who you are and what you stand for.
I will extend an opportunity to any lodge member out there in our jurisdiction that wants to run ideas or has questions about how they can become more visible in the community. I have an extensive background in being involved in the community on many different fronts, and I have all kinds of ideas rolling in my head. So if any brother out there wants to reach out and contact me, I'm sure that they can find my contact information somewhere on Facebook or other various social media, and I'll have a conversation with them. If I'm in the area, I'll drop by their lodge, and I'll have that conversation with their board of general purposes or whatever community, whatever lodge group they've got about how we can do this. Because let's make ourselves visible a bit more. That's how we're going to grow the craft. So please reach out.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Alberta Freemason with voices from across Alberta and music from the Very Worshipful Grand Organist, Brother Emilio De Mercato. Happy to meet,
Yeah.
sorry to part. Happy to meet again.
I ask the brethren this: attend a lodge event that you didn't think you'd be interested in.
Yeah, I like that. For example, the brothers who know me well know I'm not really interested in watching professional sports. It's just not my thing. But I've watched a lot of hockey games with Andrew, and the reality is watching sports with people is a totally different experience than watching sports alone on your couch. Community makes all the difference.